This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Josh Gould, CEO of The Big Word. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. So you've been with The Big Word in some capacity for 20 years, 2 decades. It's a really good run with the same organization. You're also an investor, a board member, and a podcast host, just like me. Take us back to 2006 and how you got involved with The Big Word.
Well, first, I'm sure anyone who's watching this, not just listening, is probably thinking, he looks way too young to have been doing this for 20 years. But I'll take you back. And really, I'll start with the truth. And that was, I didn't intend ever to work for The Big Word. I was working at the time as a buyer for a big box store. And like a lot of probably your listeners, I wanted to take control of my life. I wanted to have the flexibility that comes long term with business ownership. So I called my dad and I asked him, can I stay in your apartment in London whilst I look for a company that I can work for and then do an MBO? So I was looking for a certain size company, and an MBO stands for management buyout. And he told me, listen, you can live in my apartment while you're looking for a job as long as you come and run my telemarketing team in London. And that was well over 20 years ago. He's long retired and I'm still here. I always thought, by the way, it'd be the other way around, that I would leave the business to him and retire young. And, you know, he always used to tell me that he wants to die at the boardroom table.
So for people that are unfamiliar with The Big Word, can you give us a sense of what the brand is and what it does?
Yeah, so The Big Word really exists to eradicate the final barrier of communication, and that's language. When we first came up with that, it was very much something that was made for marketing. But over the last couple of decades, it's really become something that everyone in The Big Word, whether they are a freelancer or an employee, and we have nearly 15,000 freelancers and employees, have really come to live and breathe and get up for in the morning. And, you know, that's really due to many of the stories and the things that we hear on a daily basis. Nearly 3 babies are born on average a day with a Big Word interpreter in the room or on a video. And what they're doing is they're interpreting between the patient and the doctor. We're in prisons, we're in police stations, we're in courts around the world. We are the company that's part of every fabric of society that you've never heard of. And we're in theaters of war. And we're really providing a solution that is incredibly potent and powerful. It can be, you know, often it's said that we are the weapon that the US and the UK take to war that you don't have to shoot. And we're the hearts and minds. We're the ones that meet the communities, talk to the communities, bring them on board. So that's what we do. We do it in a number of ways. It's either written, spoken, or nonverbal. So we do sign language as well. Mm-hmm. We provide it via AI. You can have an AI interpreter. You can have a human interpreter by video, by phone. So if you call up, I know you're in Virginia. If you call up Medicare or Medicaid and you don't speak English, you'll have a Big Word interpreter on the line with you. And then we do it in person as well. It works like Uber. You press a button on an app, and it's only available to government contracts and healthcare systems. So we don't have your local car body shop and, you know, using our service. It's not that we don't want those in, you know, long term, but we're trying to solve a problem for tens of millions of people and make ourselves available to billions of people. And the best way to do that is with the UK government, US government and other European governments.
Yeah, you painted a really good picture of the scale of this thing. I mean, that's an incredible amount of people working as employees. And I'm assuming the translators are 1099s, maybe not. But you've kind of given us a good idea of what makes a good client. There's so many different applications. But what about the translator? Like, who makes a good translator for you? Where it's like, yeah, if someone listening to this is like, I could do this. I want to be part of the big work.
Yeah, I think the translators have a very similar outlook to people who are looking to franchise businesses. They want to take control of their own life. They want to work the hours that they want to work. And it's not to say that running a business is easy and you can just work part-time, but eventually you can, when you build it up and you build your teams up and you build your systems up. So that's what we try and do. We're not a franchise, but we work very much like that. We create a business in a box for our linguists, and they are written and spoken. They're 1099 workers, or in the UK, they're freelancers, and they can accept and decline a job. They can carry out that job, whether it be on a video like we're on today or a telephone call, or whether it be face to face, and then they can invoice us all from that same piece of software, which we call the bot. It works the same way as Uber, as I mentioned before. It's very, very simple and it's very process driven.
Yeah, it seems like a really good seamless integration with the gig economy. Like my 18-year-old, he's had a couple jobs and he also does DoorDash on the side and he loves the freedom and flexibility of doing that. He still has his job that he likes, but it's kind of cool to have the flexibility to do something like that where he works when he wants, he gets to pick and choose the orders he takes. So I can see the benefit for a translator, like turning it on or turning it off, depending on their schedule. So Josh, you lead a business that operates across countries, cultures, time zones. How do you, as a business owner and CEO, create a consistent operating playbook while still giving your local teams enough autonomy to be successful?
So it's a great big challenge. It's a wonderful question as well. And the way it's done is you actually cannot create an identical business in each geographical location. What you need is a base. You need a DNA, but then you have to be able to change what you provide. So have a look at a franchise like McDonald's. If you go to McDonald's in the United States, you will see a very familiar menu. If you go to a McDonald's in India, and I do a lot of business in India and I love McDonald's in India, you're going to see a McDonald's that looks somewhat similar to one in the US, but it's going to look very Indian and it's going to have a tandoori burger and it's going to have the spices and tastes for the Indian tongue. And this is what we do essentially. We take our business and we know that in the UK, it's all government. Hospitals are government. Everything is government. It's public sector. And not only that is they're not voted in. The public sector is run by people who are apolitical at the highest levels. In the US, the public sector is very fragmented and it's run by people who are appointees of political people. And they change whenever there's an election. So imagine like your biggest clients change all the time, which is a challenge. So you have to build out a slightly different team with sets of processes that really work for each country, messaging that works for each country. In the healthcare system in the US, federally, they have to provide an interpreter and a translation. But the funding doesn't come federally. So it's very, very price sensitive. But at the same time, quality is important because people are quick to sue. Whereas in the UK, people are slow to sue and actually the government will pay for it all. So you require different processes. And I think it's very important for all business owners to understand this. You are going to have to, when working internationally, adapt to your host country. I've been to places in the Muslim world, the Arab world, where you can't put out the same HR questionnaire as you would in the US because you'll deeply offend them. And it'll actually, I remember one case where we put out a questionnaire and it asked, we want to support you better. Are you in the LGBTQ plus community? And I won't say where we sent that to, but we sent it to all our offices and we got major complaints saying, you're asking people to tick a box that can imprison them. So the HR manager was doing it to try and be supportive, to try and help. So, and this is an example of where it can go really wrong. And we see it all the time in localization where big global companies get it horribly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and that McDonald's was a really good analogy because, if you live in the States and you don't travel internationally, you don't realize that, they're running the same playbook, but the decor is going to be a little different. The way they, greet you is going to be different. The menu is going to be different, but it's still going to be operating the same general playbook. So that's kind of interesting how you've had to do that all over the world to be successful. So, let's talk to, first-time business owners or franchise owners. In your view, what responsibilities should they personally own early on and what should they delegate? And it's tricky because when you're a new owner, you just want to get immersed in the business and learn everything about it. But then at some point, you have to start getting rid of those things and taking them off your plate and having your team do it. So what do you think is most critical for a new owner in terms of what they should tackle early on and what they should learn to delegate ASAP?
Okay, you have to know where your skill is. If you're an amazing salesperson, stick to sales. I'm a good salesman. I'm horrible operationally. I don't have the patience for it. I can't follow processes. But yet our business operates out of a playbook with thousands of approved ISO processes. So I have to hire for that weakness. I have to have amazing operational staff. I'm not a developer or an engineer, so I have to hire a really good CIO and CTO. So I think the answer to your question is it really depends on the owner. A lot of owners are actually good at the operation side. They're good at the process side. And I think it's why people are drawn to franchises because these are processes that are tried, they're tested, they're developed, that people can believe in, and that they can see that they've already worked. When I come up with a process, I have to fail thousands of times to get it right. Whereas you buy into a franchise, often you buy into the failures, right? You buy into those failures so that you could be successful. And your chance of success goes up very quickly when you buy into a franchise. So, I personally want to delegate as much as possible because I'm trying to build a skyscraper. I'm not trying to build a one-story family home. Now, I know I'm really good with the foundation, so I can go in and pretty much do everything. Even if I hate it, even if I'm not that good at it naturally, I can come in and do it. But then you have to know when that foundation is built, when to walk away and start delegating. So I would imagine the average franchise owner has to go in and kind of get at least a grounding in everything, understand it enough that you can delegate. Because when you delegate, you're not giving away the responsibility. You're just asking someone to do the tasks. Your job as a delegator is to govern all the people that you've delegated to, which means you've got to know enough to know if they're doing it well or not. You've got to know enough to find the gaps in what they're doing.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
makes
very
perfect
challenging.
sense. So let's use your analogy of kind of building that skyscraper. So you've built that first floor and it all works and you want to get to skyscraper mode. What are the indicators that you would look for before committing to building that second floor, third floor, fourth floor? Like before you go all in on this thing, you need to make sure the fundamentals are intact and it's working. So what do you look for before you kind of pour the fuel on it and accelerate it?
So I'm trying to get to that point where it becomes a machine. Like literally, you can just put money into the machine. And sure, you're going to have lots of challenges, unforeseen, policy changes, economic changes. But if everything around that skyscraper is equal, then it should be a machine. So what I am trying to do is establish which KPIs are indicative that it's working. Now, for a lot of companies and for some of my companies outside of the big word, I'm looking at a few primary KPIs. Number one is how much does it cost to acquire a customer? You'll hear that being called a CAC. What is the lifetime value of a customer? Let's say, and I've invested in cleaning businesses in the past. So let's say you're buying into a cleaning franchise and it costs $2,000 to acquire one commercial cleaning client that you've got. Now you may think that, oh my God, I'm only going to make $1,000 this year on that client. So I've now lost $1,000 because I spent $2,000 on gaining a client that I'm making $1,000 profit for. But if the lifetime value of that customer is, let's say, an average lease hold, which is about 5 years. Now I'm breaking even in year 2, doubling my money in year 4, and in year 5, I'm making 250% on my marketing spend. So that's why I'm looking at CAC, which is cost of acquired customer, lifetime value of that customer. And then I'm looking at operations. Like, what is my complaint rates? What is my service rate? For example, in our over the phone business. So this is an on-demand service where our customers, our healthcare systems, can request any language by video or over the phone in real time. And we then have to supply that, whether it's Zulu or whether it's Latin American Spanish, which is really easy for us to hear. And we do that in under 60 seconds, 98% of the time. So I know that that is good. I know the industry for non-Spanish is around 90% of the time. And so I'm looking at these rules of thumb. When I do that, I know that I can put money into it. So it's all about having a playbook that you believe in. And you're not going to win every single client. And
Right.
this is the beauty of the franchise, because the playbook is so developed before you've even started your business. And they know what works and they know what doesn't work. So you're kind of ahead of the game. But for me, I'm not a franchise. So I have to develop these playbooks in each country and each product line. And then we essentially put as much money as we can into that playbook. And it's quite scary because sometimes you don't win and you're like, oh my God. And my average client can spend millions of dollars with us. So, you lose an opportunity and you're thinking, of course, we're human and self-doubt creeps in. But if the playbook's good, you just keep playing it. And eventually, as long as it's winning 51% of the time, you're going to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about AI. That's the ubiquitous term. Everyone's talking about it. It's changing nearly every industry. I'm sure it has an impact on your industry as well. Where do you see AI creating meaningful change and leverage for business owners? And where do you see human judgment, relationships, and accountability still being essential to being successful in ownership? I guess there's a balance that has to be maintained.
Sure, and it's a good question. Let me just start by saying that AI shouldn't be talked about differently to HI. And no one's asked me, and I do a lot of interviews and I speak to a lot of people on a weekly basis. No one asks me, how is HI going to change it? And I think it's a mistake, because once we start putting something on this pedestal and we look at it as a unique part of what we do, we're missing the point. And the point of AI, and I genuinely believe in AI, and I've invested tens of millions of dollars of my own and investors' money in AI. So I'm a big advocate of AI, but I understand where its limits are. And its limits are, it's not a standalone product that's there to replace something that already exists. What it does is it supersizes what you're doing. So as a CEO, I've got like the equivalent of 20, 30 different assistants. I can write emails, I can take notes, I can book my travel easier. It's in everything that I do, to be honest with you. But it can't replace me, because what it can't do is really build a genuine relationship with my client. It can't really understand the pain in the supply chain. It can't really develop a product that doesn't exist, because it's trained on things that do exist. And here's the interesting fact about AI in the language service industry. AI actually translates already 99% of all estimated by Microsoft. 99%.
Wow.
Here's the other fact. Since the introduction of AI, the amount of content that is created by the world has zoomed up so much that in the next 12 months, just digitally available online, there will be more content created than from today since the beginning of humanity. Think about that.
It's incredible.
Thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
We've been creating content, but in the next 12 months, there's going to be more content created than all of humanity's created up until this point.
It's kind of hard to wrap your head around that fact.
Yeah, and I can help you wrap it from a revenue point of view. Revenue in the industry will grow by 6%. My unit rate, because I utilize AI in my business, is down when adjusted for inflation 60%, but my revenue will still grow. And that's what we're seeing in lots of businesses. So if you don't want to adopt AI, you're in big trouble because you're not bringing your unit rate down and you're not going to capitalize on this explosion of demand.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because as a CEO and you're responsible for the direction of the company, whenever there's a period of uncertainty, like we went through 2008 with the global financial crisis and we went through COVID, this is another panic, right? It's like AI, what do we do about it? How is it going to replace us? How is it going to hurt us? And you have to make tough decisions as a company to kind of create the culture and kind of quell that panic. So, how do you do that as a CEO when something like this is going on?
So first of all, I think a lot of panic in any business, it very much comes from the leadership. It usually rarely comes from the grassroots of the business or the clients. And I think we need to remember that. We create the reality. We frame that reality. So I hear all the time, Elon Musk says, and then people say something along the lines of that AI is going to take everyone's job and there's going to be universal income and there'll be no need for you. Well, that's a thinly veiled attempt of pumping up his own stock price. And it works, right? Because the big word makes thousands of times more profit than SpaceX, and it's worth thousands of times less, sadly. So you've got to be careful who you take your advice from. And most AI experts and advisors are getting rich from you buying into their AI stock. And when I tell people that, they say, well, I haven't bought any AI stock. And I say, well, do you have a 401k? And they say, yes. So I said, well, you bought AI stock. Have you got an ETF? Yes. Well, you're actually an owner of SpaceX then. So, this is what people don't realize, that these guys, these folks behind Anthropic who are trying to publicly list at the moment, and SpaceX who have just publicly listed, they are the ones dominating the conversation about AI. But let's look at real facts. AI was really released in 2021 mainstream. By 2023, every single business had easy access to AI, and you could build AI agents with no development skills. What happened to employment from 2023 to now? Well, actually, we have record low unemployment. So again, it's an inconvenient fact by technologists. What happened to the value of technology companies? They plummeted. You would think that if AI was that good and it was so cheap to build technology, wouldn't technology companies go up? The average technology company valuation is down 30% right now. So my advice to everyone is don't underestimate AI. The dot-com bust didn't make the internet a load of crap. The dot-com boom didn't make it phenomenal. The internet was useful. It was an awesome tool, but it was an evolution, not a revolution. So
yeah,
it will be the same here, but get on the train, because if it leaves without you, I would say your business is in great danger.
That's really good advice. So let's get back to the owner level. Like, what is a mindset shift that separates an owner who stays stuck working in the business, that's mired down in those tasks that can't grow, versus someone that can successfully scale and build a business that can kind of grow beyond themselves? Because a lot of times, especially like when I see franchise resales, if the owner is the business, they don't really have as much to sell as if they have a team in place and a system that. So, what is your kind of view on that?
So, building a business to sell and building a business are two different things. Now, you can combine them very, very successfully. Many do. I hope I'm one of them. And what I mean by that is if you have built a business around yourself, you're not an investable asset. No one will be able to buy you for the value that you should get. And I'll use the cleaning agency just because I know it and I know it's big in the franchise business. If I have relationships with Walmart, with Michael's, with the car garages, and I'm servicing all of these clients and they like me and they know me, and I want to sell my business, and people come in and they realize it's a commodity. Cleaners are a commodity. And I can go ahead and sell all the processes and great apps that we have and ease and great payment terms and everything else. But at the end of the day, if they think the business success is largely down to me, they have to factor that into the offer. So if I've got a $10 million business and I've got $2 million in EBITDA and I'm generating $1 million of cash out of that, I could get probably somewhere in the region of 6 times if I am not the business. In other words, I'll get 6 times EBITDA, and which is $12 million for that business. If I go out and I sell the same business, but everything revolves around me, all the calls come to me to deal with the cleaners, all the hiring is done by me, I'm the person that's going out, then any institutional investor, any investor that wants to scale is out. And selling businesses is still supply and demand. So if you
Yep.
take out 3/4 of your potential buyers, your price drops significantly. And then the buyers that are still in the game to buy your business, they're looking at a business with a lot more risk in. And the rule of thumb is if you built a business around yourself, you're going to lose about 50% of the clients when you walk away. So they'll do that math and they'll say, all right, that business is a $10 million business generating $1 million worth of cash and a $2 million worth of EBITDA, but I'm going to lose potentially 50% of the business. And I've still got fixed overhead. So now instead of it being 50% of the profit, it might only be 10% of the profit. And that's a huge risk. And a lot of people just walk away. You might get some dumb money who doesn't really fully realize that, but they'll pay 3 times because when they go to get a loan, an SBA loan, to buy that franchise, the bank are actually going to do that due diligence because they're looking after their own loan. And the max they can pay is usually 3 times cash flow. So that same $10 million business is likely on a good day only now worth $3 million.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think really good motivation to get uncomfortable and delegate and hire for those things that you're not an expert in and replace yourself time and again until you build that business that has that 12 million valuation.
I advise a lot of companies for sale. That's what my podcast ExecCraft is all about. And the amount of times that I see companies that if I just had 6 months helping them, they would be able to double their exit value. I mean, I would say it's the majority of companies I look at. And it's not that I'm a genius. It's just I'm on the other side of this often, and I know the formula. And no one's been fooled, no one's been tricked. But if you can't get leverage to acquire a company, if you can't ensure that that company has safe cash flow, then you are decreasing your buyer pool so significantly. And in the game of supply and demand, the supply is fixed and the demand goes down, you're going to get fractions of what you should. And it's really sad to see. I bet you see it as well when you have franchisees who have spent 40 years building a business, and you know that with not much more effort, they could have got 2 to 3 times more for that franchise. But it's to the benefit, I guess, of your clients who are looking to buy a franchise.
I see it all the time. I'm very active in franchise resales, and you hit the nail on the head. If the franchise seller has a team in place, then the valuation is upheld. And if they don't, and the holes are poked in it, and the new owner has to come in and do everything themselves, the offer goes way down. So that's 100% accurate. Even in the smaller deals that we do, which are under 2 million. Josh, this has been great. I've learned a lot. Anything else you want to add to the mix today before we wrap up?
Yes, I'm on a mission to prophesize having good financials. So if it's okay with you, I'll finish with that message.
Sure.
I buy a lot of companies. I invest in a lot of very small companies, sub 2 million. And the one thing that prevents me, not just from investing in 9 out of 10 companies, I would say it's 9.9 out of 10 companies, is the fact that I can't see how much money they make. So if you're a franchise owner and you own the business, I urge you, go and get every single year a clean P&L done by an external accountant. Get them to sign it off. Then you've got an audited P&L and balance sheet. Put it into a file. Call that file data room. It's the one thing you can do to help you maximize the exit value of your business, but it will also make it much easier when it comes to selling the business. And if you're on the other side of this, you're looking, for a franchise, be meticulous about the finances, because the amount of times I hear people saying, I bought that car wash, they told me they did 200,000 in cash and it just was off book, and they told me this and they told me that. And I'm thinking, why did you believe it? And if it was true, well, then they've had the upside probably by hiding it from the tax man. They can't get the upside twice. So yeah, it's the biggest mistake small business owners make is they don't take their finances seriously. They don't understand them, they don't acknowledge them, get your finances done. Don't just have a K1 tax return done every year. Really have a good P&L, get a good bookkeeper, and you will be well ahead of the game.
Fantastic advice. Thank you for that, Josh. And if anyone listening would like to connect with Josh and his team to learn more about the big word, contact me at franchiseqb.com and I'll get you connected. Thank you, Josh, so much for taking the time to get in the huddle with us today.
No, thank you for having me and giving me
got
the
it.
platform. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.